Welcome to IPHA's Interprofessional Health Talk, an interview series focused on showcasing interprofessionalism through insightful discussions with various professionals and students within the health sector. We hope to expose students to different career paths and skill sets so that they can make a more informed decision about their future. I'm Harneet.
And I'm Jenna. Our guest today is Dr. Douglas Gray, who is a senior scientist in the Cancer Therapeutics program at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute and a professor of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology at the University of Ottawa. Welcome, Dr. Gray. It's so great to have you here.
It's very nice to be here.
So we know that you've received doctoral training in retrovirology. Could you walk us through why you chose that field and what it's like to be a retrovirologist?
Right. Well, I can't claim that it was part of any great plan I had when I was a student. I was one of those kids who collected bugs and so on and was always very science geeky, but I got to university actually originally intending to sign up for a program that would get me into law school because that's something my father thought I would be good at. But I had a superb counselor when I chose my courses for my first year who looked at my high school marks and asked me what on earth I was doing going into anything other than science. And so I'll be forever grateful for that person. So I went into a science course. And by the time I got to fourth year, it was pretty clear that my interests were in molecular biology and genetics and things of that nature.
So we wanted to ask, throughout the years, you must have encountered a lot of different types of students coming in and out of your lab over the years. And so we wanted to ask you what kind of training or education those students tended to pursue after they finished their research with you.
Right. So the short answer is that they've gone in many different directions. Most recently, most of the graduate students I've had have gone into medicine, actually. And more specifically, medicine with a strong research component. So the training that they get here, I would like to think, inspires them to want to do more research. And so there is this wonderful career path, which is the clinician scientist. And so I seem to be, at least in the last 10 years, generating mainly clinician scientists. So these are...
What would you say is the difference between doing doctoral studies and postdoctoral studies?
I'm not sure what you're going after there. So in terms of...
what is the difference between those two types of training and what's it like doing a PhD?
Okay. So PhD, one either does these days, you finish your honors degree, you enroll in graduate studies. In our system, you would always start off as a master's student, and then you would either complete your master's and then go on to do a PhD, or if things were going well and you liked where you were, you can reclassify. You take a reclassification exam and switch from the master's to the doctoral program, and you get your PhD.
What would you say are your favorite classes to teach, and why?
So, I have taught a number of undergraduate courses, both here and in the United Kingdom, and I've taught a lot more, it must be said, graduate courses. I think I'm better at teaching graduate courses than I am undergraduate courses. There are probably a number of students who've suffered through my undergraduate courses who would agree with that. The reason is in the graduate courses I teach, they're always much smaller. The undergraduate courses, as I recall, had more than 100 students in them. And there really wasn't a lot of back and forth interaction. I would get questions at the end of the lectures, and oftentimes about what was on the exam and the expected
Guilty.
things. Well, I completely get that.
Do students who go into graduate studies find it difficult to transition from studying in a way that's basically like you regurgitating information, retaining, but in contrast with graduate studies, it's more of you critically thinking and thinking of just your research questions, and things like that?
Yeah, so there has been a shift over the years. So when I went through this process, it was a sort of sink or swim thing, and you had to make that transition, and some people made it better than others. Now, it's taken a very long time to realize that there is a necessity for this, but now we actually have courses that are given to the new graduate students, which are not courses about information. It's courses about, how to do this thinking, how to make this transition,
So you're both like we said, both a senior scientist and you're also a professor, but you work with probably colleagues from various different backgrounds. Could you describe interprofessionalism within the career path of being a scientist and the importance it holds?
Right. So this is a hugely important part of what I do, because I am trying to span a fairly broad spectrum here, all the way from very basic research. As I've said, I'm interested in the fundamental biology of aging, why some organisms age at different time frames than others, and what the molecular underpinnings of all of those processes are. So that's very basic research. But I also would very much like to make a contribution that will help human health in some way, which is what my employers here at the hospital are reasonably assuming that I will do. And so it's actually a very important part of what I do, that I foster interdisciplinary relationships.
So another question that we wanted to ask you is, in your opinion, what are some important soft skills that you think students should always make a point of working on and developing if they do want to delve into research and those types of things?
Right. I've already mentioned curiosity, and that is the most critical thing. When I interview students for potential positions, the thing that is most important to me is whether they are asking me questions, whether there's any indication that they have a curiosity which is genuine.
We want to kind of shift gears and talk more about how you balance between being both a scientist and also a professor.
Yeah, well, I have expectations on both sides that I have to live up to. So in a sense, that's something that is kind of imposed on me. I have performance criteria that I have to meet to satisfy my bosses. I had many bosses, many bosses. And so there are things that I need to be doing just to make sure that I'm fulfilling the expectations of people that employ me. But obviously I didn't go into this line of work just to tick some boxes on someone's performance chart. I really am trying to make a difference in areas that matter to me. And so there are things that I want to understand before I finish up this job, this career. There are places where I want to be in my understanding of the genes that we've been working on. And so I have a sort of rolling scale of how I'm doing on that. There are more questions that are generated seemingly on a daily basis than I can actually get around to answering, but that's just the nature of science. So the balance is you do the things that you need to do to make sure that you're performing in your job, but to actually feel like you're succeeding in your job, you need to be making progress towards the scientific goals that you've set for yourself.
Another question we did want to ask you was regarding students that are perhaps following a career path similar to yours. And we were wondering if you had any type of advice you'd like to give them.
Yeah, I've already mentioned that probably more than once, but the thing that is key is asking questions. So you need to be asking a lot of questions, and the only other thing that I can say from where I sit, having been here a while, is the whole COVID thing. The research was a difficult undertaking even before COVID, and we're seeing that actually. The number of students who are deciding to go into a pure research career, doing the sort of career that I've done, has been going down. I would say students are seeing, the amount of time that we spend writing grants and the fierce competition to get academic posts in this country and things like that.
Thank you for that. Would there be anything else that you would like to add, or any other advice you'd like to give people listening in?
Well, just returning to the same theme. This kind of work for the people who want to follow this career, the real reward is, if you give it just a moment's thought, is in this job, you get to think about the things you want to think about all day and get paid for it. So how many careers are there where you actually get to think about what you want to think about? And if you get tired about thinking about that, you can go and work on something else. And it's all down to you. And, you can do well at it if you really invest the effort. But it's a wonderful thing, I think, in life to spend all day just thinking about the thing you want to do and interacting with all the clever people that are around here.
I think that's a really interesting thing you brought up. I've never personally, thought of it in that perspective. Being a researcher, you're quite literally satisfying your curiosity. Growing up, we're curious about so many things. And as we delve into different careers, those curiosities sometimes die off. But when you're researching, you can directly try to figure out the things that you're curious about and really delve into that. And I think involving your passions with that innate curiosity really ends up creating something great for yourself and helps you contribute to the greater scientific community too. So I think that's an amazing point to be brought up.
Yeah, and you spend all day hanging around with really smart people. So
yeah,
of course,
that's a plus.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, I guess now it's time for the closing remarks. So Dr. Gray, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been a really great conversation and we've learned a lot from you. And I think there's a lot more to be learned as well. And we also want to say thank you to everyone that's tuning in to another episode of IPHA Talks. We hope that you enjoyed this as much as we did. Have a great weekend.